Apologies to everybody. Sound now. Bobby Slowik. We got it. Bobby Slowik. We got it. We got all the stuff figured out, right? Got sounds now? Okay. Bobby Slowik, new offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. 2 seasons as the 49ers offensive passing game coordinator. He's been in the NFL for 11 years. He spent time in Washington. It's interesting that a lot of the articles don't mention that he spent 2 years with Pro Football Focus. It's weird because it's kind of a unique thing. There aren't that many coaches in the NFL who have also spent time working at Pro Football Focus. And I know a lot of people don't like Pro Football Focus because of their grades and how erratic and sometimes they don't seem like they make that much sense. They do actually contract with a lot of NFL teams. So for a lot of the real deep dive technical stuff, there are a lot of NFL teams that use their data. That's interesting to me because I think he's seen things from a different perspective. And that's something that D'Amico Ryans had said that he wanted. He wanted a diverse staff, and he meant in terms of different experiences, different teaching styles, all of that. And I think especially kind of like D'Amico Ryans, he's spent time on the defensive side of the ball, and has that perspective. But now he's been under Kyle Shanahan as the passing game coordinator. We'll watch a little bit of him being interviewed from earlier this season. I think it's important to point out that he is a guy that's been highly touted for a while now, and there's just a few different articles about him. As you know, they're always trying to figure out exactly how the hell to replace all these guys. And there we go. Let's see. All kinds of. We got Trey Lance stuff coming up after this too. I'll find this thing eventually. We'll get to Trey Lance too. But as far as, let me get out of this damn thing. As far as Bobby Slowik himself goes, I think you're gonna probably see a lot of what they've been doing in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Is they want to have physical guys who can play any of the 5 skill positions, including fullback. If they get a fullback, if it's going to be Troy Hairston or somebody else that can split out wide, they're going to do it. There's going to be a screen game. They're going to have guys like Nico Collins, hopefully, dragging guys for first downs because they get them open in space. So there's a lot to get excited about. And I'm in that mode right now where I'm going to go ahead and allow myself to get excited about this stuff. Let's look at, there's an article from The Athletic in which they talked about, let's see, Kyle Shanahan really heaping a whole lot of praise on him from early in 2021 when he was first named the offensive coordinator. Screw it! I had this all set up. Now it's shot. Here we go. Okay. Bobby Slowik, yes, agreed. And we are going to go ahead and present this. I was so excited to have like all this. I was so excited to have you guys share all my new technical skills, but I'm just going to read it instead. Screw it. Matt Barrows in The Athletic was asked, who is Bobby Slowik? He apparently went from offensive assistant to passing game specialist. That's a pretty big step. Now, this was in spring of last year, and Matt Barrows said, yes, agreed. In a previous mailbag, I was asked about up-and-comers on Kyle Shanahan's staff and pointed to Slowik. The team confirmed as much when it released its coaching changes on Thursday. Slowik went from offensive assistant to offensive passing game specialist. When Shanahan and his staff first arrived in 2017, Mike LaFleur's title included passing game specialist. I know the bloom is off of Mike LaFleur's rose compared to when this article was written, but bear with us. He was later promoted to passing game coordinator, blah, 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 blah. With LaFleur now with the Jets, his previous workload presumably goes to Slowik. He's essentially been LaFleur and McDaniel's assistant for the past 2 seasons. He's the son of Bob Slowik, who's a defensive assistant under Mike Shanahan and alongside Kyle Shanahan in Washington. So you talk about being steeped in the Kubshanistan tradition. We're very much in that territory right now. I think that the diversity and experience, and the fact that he's from Kubshanistan, but he's spent time like outside of the NFL. He's spent time as a defensive coach. I like that D'Amico and Nick are kind of following through on what we've been promised. These guys, this is a guy that D'Amico obviously has a lot of experience with. Frank Ross, the special teams coordinator who's going to be retained, isn't a guy that D'Amico has experience with, but obviously Nick has experience with. Matt Burke, the defensive coordinator, doesn't have extensive experience with either of these guys. So I think they're looking all over the place. One of the other big notable things is that as Shane Steichen is named the head coach in Indianapolis, all the guys that the Texans were considering, many of the guys that the Texans were considering have become head coaches now. And so it's not like the Texans are going just strictly down a New England pipeline. They're not going down some weird Josh McCown pipeline. I think even though there's a hazard in sometimes following the herd, they're doing things in a conventional way, I think, and they're going to try to start working on, as you guys know, this pipeline that I wanted. Enrique Martinez says they are hiring Draw Johnson as the quarterback's coach. So, yes, I didn't know if that was public or not yet. Draw Johnson is going to be the quarterback's coach, and there was starting to be. I was a little aggressive in my video yesterday about Kliff Kingsbury and how much I didn't want him with the Texans. Some of that was I like me wanting to put a rubber stamp on what I felt was going to happen, which was Bobby Slowik getting hired. It was a little odd that all of a sudden Kliff Kingsbury's name was being brought into it. I don't know if that was just a genuine exploration by both sides there, or if maybe it was a little bit of gamesmanship by the Texans to push along the contract negotiations with Bobby Slowik. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all if that were the case. But I feel good about this. I think that you can go forward, and as D'Amico talked about, he wants to be physical on both sides of the line of scrimmage. D'Amico's got that side taken care of on defense. And Matt Burke is a defensive line coach and a linebackers coach mostly in his career when he wasn't doing kind of other little side projects, the defensive strategy specialist or whatever he was for the Jets. So I get really excited about that. I think that it'll be a brand and element of offensive football that hopefully looks a lot like San Francisco. And this is why I get excited. Obviously, they've got a lot of work to do, but this is why I get excited. I broke down several San Francisco games this year, and I can't tell you how much I fell in love with their style of play. They're Blutos, man. They just want to physically pound people and put their forearms on the opponent's throats, and it is just so cool to watch. And I think when D'Amico talks about that mindset, that's the same thing they do on the offensive side of the ball. I know Kyle Shanahan always had this reputation as some mild-mannered, soft-spoken dude. If you watched him on the sidelines, he looks a little psychotic. And I know that Bobby Slowik looks a little bit like almost like a school kid or something. I think he just photographs that way. I purposely chose for the thumbnail for this video one in which he looks a little bit more like Sean McVay. Like if you're going to look boyish, but maybe with a little bit of an edge. Sean McVay's got almost that like that better looking Gruden style to him. That's how I choose to look at Slowik right now. So Houston Cash Buyer says, do you think we have the offensive line to protect the quarterback like Bryce Young? Not yet. Not yet, we don't. And the rookie left guard has to get his act in gear. But the other question would be, okay, is the rookie left guard athletic enough to play the style of outside zone run that presumably the Texans are going to want to do? I think that would equally be an answer of not quite there yet. And I think this offseason is going to be really big. And we'll actually take a look at the depth chart because I want to talk about how Bobby Slowik might actually affect a lot of this. And I'll tell you guys another thing too, back to the Kliff Kingsbury stuff. I know a lot of people were kind of upset with me and thought that I was a little too aggressive perhaps in my disapproval of Kliff Kingsbury. It's for a couple of reasons, but one of which is that I got to tell you that there was, look at that. Oh, we got like an Inception thing going on there. one of my reasons for wanting a Kubshanistani offense, as many of you know, was that I wanted to be able to have interchangeability of coaches. So let's say Bobby Slowik ends up being an awesome coach and gets yanked away to be an offensive head coach somewhere. You don't want to have to all of a sudden start from scratch. And Kliff Kingsbury, it's funny. I was kind of scanning through articles. Some people from Texas Tech and some other people, they were pro Kliff Kingsbury, implored me to do a little bit more research. So I did, for the sake of, I don't want to be a complete jerk all my life. And if Kingsbury had been hired, I wanted to be able to get on board with him. But, and this is not a negative or a positive in and of itself, but Kliff Kingsbury's offense was named like the second most unique in the NFL last year, which could be great when it works out. But when you try to replace a Kliff Kingsbury, if somebody were dumb enough to give him a head coaching job again, then all of a sudden you got to try to figure out exactly how do we replicate that same thing. Where if you're using a Kubshanistani system, there are way more coaches out there that are familiar with the concepts, the philosophies, the verbiage, which is huge, the play calling names, all of that. And I also think that maybe when we watch a little of these videos there later, you might see that I'm not so sure Slowik's right there yet in terms of having a head coach persona. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. If you look at the offense right now, Nico Collins, if you can get like a Brandon Ayuk looking performance out of him, obviously like Deebo Samuel is a lot to ask, but those guys they're big, they're physical, they run after the catch. I think Nico Collins very much can be that. Brandon Cooks doesn't quite look like the same guy, but let's remember Brandon Cooks has experience with Sean McVay. They run a different version of the Kubiak-Shanahan looking system, so there's certainly a place for Brandon Cooks if he comes back into the fold. If he's, I don't know, man. After I got at 180 on Laramie Tunsil and how he went from being like a guy who's on his way out to a guy that now is like the captain and the stalwart of the team, I'm going to give time and see what happens with Brandon Cooks. John Mechie, another one that you might think, okay, if I remember Kubiak's system right, it wasn't like they usually had a slot-looking type with wide receiver, but they did work in David Anderson. Remember, it's not like they're opposed to ever having a classic slot receiver. And Mechie, I think, has that absolute toughness that D'Amico was looking for. And if some of you didn't see the reports, when Casario was on with Sean Pendergast and I in the morning, Payne and Pendergast, 6 to 10 a.m. on weekdays on 6 10 a.m., he said that it looks like Mechie will probably be ready for OTAs, which is damn good news, or at least training camp, whatever. He was very careful, he didn't want to make promises or anything on behalf of him. The offensive line is where we get to the interesting part. As we talked about, Kenyon Green has some work to do. Justin Britt is parts unknown. I don't know. He might be off on a darkness retreat right now, for all I know, with Aaron Rodgers. AJ Cann could be replaced. Free agency is going to be interesting for these guys, but at tackle, I think you're okay. Jordan Akins, guy, again, we talk about run after catch and physicality. I think that Jordan Akins, if he's a little late in his career to all of a sudden turn into an awesome run blocker, but this scheme might help him out a lot. And then, boom! Are you looking at where my squiggly little cursor is going? Dameon freaking Pierce. Okay. Last year, I told you guys, okay, you got a little excited. Some of you wanted to forecast 1,500 yards for Dameon Pierce. And I said, look, the Texans in 2021 were one of the worst rushing offenses in the league. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, Dameon Pierce looked freaking awesome until that worst rushing offense in the league started to catch up with him. And we get what we eventually had, which was poor Dameon Pierce's body breaking down a little bit. But I think Dameon's going to be freaking awesome in this. Troy Hairston is a huge wild card at this point. Obviously, we know that Kyle Shanahan loves having a fullback, but there isn't just a Kyle Juszczyk dropping off the turnip truck every afternoon. Harrison is still a work in progress. I do think that you're going to get a much better feel for exactly what you have in him. All right, Christopher Brown. Here you go. Oh, okay. I thought he was telling me to calm down. Let me throw this in here real quick. Y'all need to calm down. How do you guys know Young will even get hurt? Quarterback's bigger than him get hurt. Just calm down and let it play out. I've been trying to stay away from the comments until towards the end because I've got all these other technical issues to worry about. So I don't know who's arguing about Bryce Young and his size and everything. It's something that I don't want to be a concern, and yet I'm concerned about it. But I think I agree with Chris in terms of the multiple injury concerns you have with any quarterback. Trey Lance. Trey Lance is, built like a brick bleep house, and he's got injury concerns. And we'll get to the old Trey Lance conundrum a little bit later too. So to recap, as far as coaching changes, Bobby Slowik hired. Kliff Kingsbury, I'm still open to him being on staff. As I said in my video yesterday, I think that Kliff Kingsbury, at least I said in my video notes, I don't know if this made it to the video. Kliff Kingsbury, yes, has some very good ideas, is an innovator in a lot of ways, was awesome with college kids, but I think he got to the NFL despite having a little bit of experience in New England, his rookie year, and as they let him go to meetings and everything. That was in the infancy of New England. I think him just spending some time in an actual NFL offense with somebody different could do him a lot of good for his next go-round if he decides to be an NFL offensive coordinator. I felt like there were a lot of elements of Kliff Kingsbury's offense that, frankly, were still too college-like. I think that in the second halves of seasons, defensive backs could watch his offense and look at the body language of wide receivers and know whether they were involved in the read or not. There are a lot of things that are just more subtle and less about the actual way the play's drawn up as much as the way it's coached that just spoke to a primitive college mindset. And it's not necessarily Kliff Kingsbury's fault, except that I don't think he's as driven as a Chip Kelly was, for instance, when he came in to figure out how to adapt his offense to the NFL. So I'm not a Kliff Kingsbury hater. I just did not want him right now, and I think Bobby Slowik is going to very much be a good guy. I'm going to show you a video. If we can pull this up. Here we go. It's going to be, this is Bobby Slowik interviewed before training camp this year.
Way we kind of go about installing our offense and the process we go about doing it and the reasons we do it. And it's the same this year as it's been in the past. And it is not easy in the beginning, especially the way the defense is playing right now.
Okay, so I think this is early in camp when apparently maybe the offense was getting their ass kicked all over the place because you had Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and those guys and D'Amico Ryans, frankly. So, frankly, D'Amico Ryans was just dominating what turned out to be a very good offense.
It's very difficult, but it takes time to train how to play in rhythm, how to feel the pocket, how to stay aggressive, how to know when the right time is to let stuff rip and when the right time is to check the ball down. And all the way from the beginning of OTAs till now, all the quarterbacks, and Trey especially, have made just gigantic strides in all those areas. And you can see him getting better every day and every day and every day. And it's been really cool to watch and to watch him gel with our receivers who are making similar strides and what they need to do as far as beating man coverage and some of the looks we've got and all the different zones that we've got on defense.
Okay, so talking about Trey Lance there, and this is the huge question mark. And frankly, they get into a lot of 49ers stuff that I'm not interested in. I got a little dismayed, or I got perturbed when I was reading some of the stuff written already about this hire. It's very much more focused on how it affects San Francisco, and understandably so, except the Texans keep making all these moves that are pretty universally lauded by the NFL literati, and I'm kind of taken aback by it. I'm not used to all this widespread praise in the offseason, and we'll be the first to tell everybody that I'm talking about all of you and me, that you can't win in the offseason doesn't mean anything, right? But it kind of does. When we haven't had a lot of W's over the last 2 years, so give us a few W's, man. So Trey Lance is the big question. And what do you know about Trey Lance right now? Not a whole lot. This is where I get very nervous about trading for Trey Lance, as so many people suggest, because you look at various anonymous NFL scouts or execs, and they'll say, hey, well, I don't think Trey Lance's trade value is all that high right now. I think Trey Lance's trade value is as high as it's anywhere on the spectrum from can't touch him. Like, remember Kyle Tucker? Remember when Kyle Tucker was untouchable and nobody was really convinced that Kyle Tucker should be untouchable? We were like, I don't, Luna, what the hell? What's so special about Kyle Tucker? And then you find out that, oh, here we are a few years later. We're like, you got to pay Kyle Tucker $300 million now. He's going to get that money elsewhere. So it could be there. He could be untouchable. Or, God forbid, if Kyle Shanahan were willing to give up Trey Lance for like a 4th rounder, I would say don't waste that 4th rounder. Because one of my golden rules in life, football or otherwise, I told my wife this when I married her. I said, honey, if Kyle Shanahan quits on a quarterback, then my offensive coordinator is not going to transform that quarterback. It's just a rule I live by. Kyle Shanahan is likely going to get the MVP season out of Matt Ryan. He's going to take a guy, oh, shoot. Why the hell am I blanking on the second-year quarterback? The quarterback, Bill O'Brien's quarterback is second year. It's late. It's been a long day. Anyway, son of a bitch. Give it to me. Anyway, that you're going to take a quarterback and get more out of him than Kyle Shanahan did. He just has this way of getting the most out of quarterbacks. I think that with Brock Purdy, if Brock Purdy didn't have Christian McCaffrey this year, it would have been a lot easier to tell exactly what Brock Purdy was. The problem was he came in after McCaffrey had been there for a few weeks. Garoppolo had started looking pretty damn good now that McCaffrey was in the mix. And if you look at a lot of the performances out of Purdy this year, he was getting like 10 yards run after the catch out of his receivers. They were just really, really good performances. And I don't know if if they've seen enough out of Brock Purdy to know that he's definitively better than Trey Lance. So I don't think it's going to happen. I know there was an anonymous executive that saw perhaps the 49ers trading Trey Lance to Tennessee. And I know there's also reports that perhaps that Tom Brady will go to San Francisco. I'm not buying any of those. As far as Vegas is concerned, Vegas says that right now Trey Lance is the odds-on favorite to be the quarterback this year. I still suspect that will be it. When Purdy scrambled in an extended plays, I think that's when some of Kyle Shanahan, nay, Bobby Slowik's brilliance was most on display, was because the play was extended, and you credit Brock Purdy and his athleticism and having a cool head as a rookie to do that. But remember what he was doing a lot of times? He made some great throws, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them were also just wide open outlet receivers because Shanahan and Slowik do such a great job of shifting a defense to the entire half of a field to where the guys that seep back out during the scramble drill, they end up wide open. And that's stuff that presumably Trey Lance could do. I don't think they're going to give up on Trey Lance just yet, so we'll just we'll get something else. Let's see. NBC, if you're asking why I looked like I got dumped into a bucket of Miracle Grow, I don't know if you're talking about Bobby Slowik or me. My green screen's all messed up because my office is getting redone, so I took a picture of it before we did it, and I'm using a green screen. Apologize to be lying to everybody, but that's why you see a little bit of green every now and then. Umberto Gonzalez says, whoop, whoop, love the hires. D'Amico, the mastermind. Last piece missing, my boy Bryce Young. Let's go, baby. Get the quarterback right. Go Texans. Got my season tickets set, baby. And Dangerous Juju says the Colts don't have a lot to offer to get Bryce Young. That's the question right now. I think if I had to guess, I think that Caserio and D'Amico Ryans probably have the same reservations all of us do. Look, I love Bryce Young. I'm enthusiastic about Bryce Young. I think he's the right kind of kid. He's got moxie and football IQ. He's got time under Bill O'Brien, which is actually a really good thing. Bill O'Brien is many kind of weaknesses as he has. He is a very smart football guy. A lot of quarterbacks gush about him. Ryan Fitzpatrick says he changed his career because he taught him to look at the game a different way. So I like all of those things, and I think concerns about his size are somewhat overblown, and yet it's still a matter of just simple physics at times. There's going to be hits. There will be hits that he will not survive that other guys would. And then it just comes down to a matter of statistics. And is he going to be super, super smart in limiting his hits outside the pocket? Is he going to be very, very careful and learn how to fall inside the pocket? I don't worry about him the way, some guys like RG3 and Tua Tagovailoa, two guys that are notoriously bad fallers. They are poor faller downers. And it's the weirdest thing because you just can't figure out how somebody can be that athletic and still not know how to fall properly, and they put themselves in harm's way. I don't think Bryce Young has that disease, so we don't have to worry about that. As far as the other hires, Frank Ross is retained, Matt Burke. Oh, Draw Johnson. So Draw Johnson's a quarterback's coach. Again, I really like what D'Amico is doing in terms of putting his money where his mouth is when he said he wanted to get guys who had different backgrounds, different teaching styles, all of these different things. Because if you look at even Gerard Johnson, he has been coaching in the league for a while now, but he was a private quarterbacks coach for a few years between his playing career and when he got back into coaching. I don't have his resume pulled up exactly, but I mean, he used to come in on Sports Radio 610 a bunch, and I love talking to him. He's just one of these classic guys where you talk to these quarterbacks, man, and you learn something every time. You think you knew a little bit about football, and then you talk to a guy away from cameras and everything, and when he'll talk freely, smack about other people, which Gerard doesn't, but other quarterbacks will. And just by being like a high school quarterbacks coach, the private academies and lessons and everything, I think you learn a different aspect of the game there. So, and I do think that when they brought Kingsbury in, maybe there's still a role for Kingsbury either as a consultant or the pass game coordinator or something like that. Kingsbury is a guy that has obviously a much different background and experience in a much different type of system than Kubiak, Shanahan, or Slowik. So I like and admire the fact that they wanted to talk to Kingsbury. I didn't really think it was a genuine interview at the time. And I say at the time, everything, it feels like we're in a warp speed zone where that was yesterday. That was 2 days ago. It feels like a week ago. Understand Money says Texans fans are back. I think you're right. I think Texans fans to a certain degree are back. I want to bring up a couple of articles. This one from an unnamed executive about Trey Lance. And we'll get this. Let's see. All right. I think losing. So this is from during training camp, and it was in, I believe, The Athletic about what unnamed anonymous execs thought about Trey Lance. I think losing Lance for the season is tough from a long-term standpoint because they need those reps to develop. They clearly see him as their future. It's hard to evaluate him when he's not playing. And I think that's the most reasonable place for the 49ers to be right now is they don't know exactly what they have in Trey Lance. Trey Lance's upside athletically is still better than Brock Purdy's. And I'm not saying as a quarterback, but I think athletically, it's just, I don't know if you can't even call it an upside. Trey Lance is just a better athlete. But it's not like Brock Purdy is a bad athlete, and he certainly showed an escapability. But in terms of arm talent and pure physical traits, I think they still see some upside there that Trey Lance has, and they want to find out what that is. I don't think that they don't have to worry about losing Brock Purdy anytime soon. Both those guys are on the rookie contracts. So at this point, although I don't think it's likely, I think there's a better chance that Garoppolo ends up in Houston than Trey Lance. And I don't want them to trade the farm right now for I don't want them to trade the farm away or all their draft picks more specifically for Trey Lance. This was the unnamed executive that thought they'd trade Trey Lance to Tennessee, and then the 49ers will end up in Brady, and Brady will play 1 year for his home team, and they will have Brock Purdy as the backup. This sounds like this guy was just drunk. And I was like, I'm going to trade Trey Lance to Tennessee, and then they'll have Brady, and Brady will play 1 year for his home team, and then they'll have Brock Purdy as the backup. That's the chatter. They have the defense already. Brady wants to win one more, and this is right up the 49ers' alley. I'll stick something up your alley, buddy. I don't think anybody's going anywhere. I don't think that I don't think that that's going to happen. I think Brady's done. There's also one unnamed scout in that article that I can't pull up right now, where he basically said, "What are all these other anonymous execs smoking? Like, who's going to trade? Who's going to? Oh, it was in the Aaron Rodgers trade, because then there's all kinds of Aaron Rodgers speculation too." I did just start. Did any think? Tell me if I'm crazy, or tell me if I'm like overlooking something. Now that there's actually positive vibes around the Texans. Is there any way? Is it possible that Aaron Rodgers would come to Houston? Let's think about that out loud for a minute. Okay, so Aaron Rodgers is going to go on his 4-day darkness retreat. By the way, I've done a lot of research on the darkness retreat. It's been interesting stuff. It's basically after a certain amount of time in complete darkness, your body starts releasing, I think it's DMT. It's some chemical that causes hallucinations. It's somewhat similar to ayahuasca or magic mushrooms, some of the the psychedelics. But these people have revelations and huge life-altering events. It goes back to for centuries and centuries where different religious traditions or monks or whoever has gone and meditated in caves for a week at a time. A lot of it is to bring about these visions. So that's what Aaron Rodgers is doing. Frankly, the 4-day version sounds a little lightweight from what I've been reading. It seems like the really good stuff just starts kicking in on day 4. So I don't know if he's half-assing it. He should go 7 days. But all that aside, if he comes back and he's all in on playing football, would you be opposed to Aaron Rodgers, who already learned this offense or a version of it from Matt LaFleur and would be able to step in to something? Who I think Aaron Rodgers just hates the executives in Green Bay. The more I just look at the whole situation, I don't think he likes Murphy or Gutekunst. That's just my gut feel on it. And he just doesn't, as he's preaching peace, love, and togetherness, I don't think he wants to be the guy that comes out and just flat out says, hey, fire these guys. Can you guys please read between the lines? Because I love everybody, but fire those guys. I want their jobs. I want their heads on pikes. So tell me if I'm crazy to even consider whether or not Aaron Rodgers would come here. Personally, I'd rather just keep working like in a normal. We've had 2 years of tanking. The normal growth curve here is that for these next couple of years, we'll do some genuine building and actually get better at football. Let's see. NPC. Oh, that was the one we already did. I've lost these all. Kliff Kingsbury, and there was a report about the Kubiaks and what they're doing. I'm going to be honest with you. This is what happens if you name your sons and they all start with the K and your last name's Kubiak. I can't remember which one is Clay and which one is Clint. I believe Clint is the one that's a little bit more experienced in the NFL. Clay was the one that was coaching at Strake. And Clint is, I believe, is he taking a job with the 49ers? Somebody tell me. Brady's done, bro. Yeah, I believe you, James. Gronkowski looks drunk on Fox NFL Sunday. I believe it. I think Gronk's doing a great job. I think he's getting better. I think that Gronk needs to find that balance between doing whatever the producers tell him to do that might be goofy or stupid, but then also I think sometimes he tries to sound he's trying to sound like, when Beavis would have like that moment of brilliance and he would like reel off something super intelligent, like he just got kicked in the head by a horse and it reversed whatever brain damage he had. He's got to stop trying to go there. Seth, your thoughts on the Gerard Johnson hire? I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm very, very excited about this. I know Gerard just a little bit personally from when he used to do guest hits on Sports Radio 610. I think before I was full time, or at least when I would see him like when he was coming into the afternoon show and I was leaving the midday show. And I always really enjoyed listening to him and learning about football from him, being able to ask him questions. I like that he's got a very broad diversity of experiences, including as a high school quarterbacks coach, working with high school kids and developing them. I think he's got that teacher's mentality. So if you look at Gerard as a coach who also has time, because he was in Minnesota this year. Let's pull it up. Let's have ourselves a day, everybody. It's a day. You know why? I'm going to tell you. I've been telling a few people over at Kirby that I'm just really happy that they're able to just get down to doing football stuff. This has really been 2 years. Oh, here's my thumbnail from now. It's been 2 years of just really a bunch of nonsense, and obviously a lot of it's self-inflicted, but there's a Gerard Johnson. What's that? Hold on a second. Jared Johnson. So there's a Gerard Johnson who's obviously different than Jared Johnson. So I don't know. All right. So Jared started off as a player professionally with the Hartford Colonials in 2011. How's that for diversity of experience? My God, that's awesome. And like I said, I always really liked Jared. Hartford Colonials. Damn it. Let's see. Hartford Colonials, Philadelphia Eagles, Arizona Rattlers, Pittsburgh Steelers, Sacramento Mountain Lions, Seattle Seahawks. Okay, so during all this time, I can remember this now, he would still be coming in the off seasons and doing some work on radio and television and whatnot. But with the 49ers, he did a diversity coaching fellowship in 2017. He was with the Colts in 2019. These fellowships, usually they're just during training camp. Offensive quality control coach for the Colts for 2 years. And then with the Vikings this year, where, again, he's got more experience in that Kubiak-Shanahan system. I like this. I like it a lot. And some of that is just from knowing Gerard, just from what I've known of him personally, and I know how people speak of him. I think he really, let's see, 6 likes, really. Come on, y'all. Hit the, 6 likes. I need more likes. Apparently. People say that's a big deal. I got 258 people watching, and only 6 of you can like something. Damn it. Unacceptable. Let's see, James Jones. Presumably James Jones, a guy and not the football player. I'm a Washington fan. You got squad, just need the right pieces and you'll be straight. I'll take that, man. I'll take that. If Kliff was our offensive coordinator, we would definitely draft a quarterback. Now that Slowik is our OC, it looks like we're going to get a veteran quarterback, then wait next year to draft a quarterback. I wonder, I understand, I think, where you're coming from on that. Let me leave that up so people could know what I'm talking about. Okay. I don't know if that's a fair assumption to make. I think if you look at Shanahan, let's see, and like, I don't think they're going to try to mimic Shanahan. I'm just trying to go through the process a little bit. I think that if they really like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, I think they take those guys. I think if there's a guy, if one of the second tier guys is there and mid to late round, whether it's Will Levis or somebody else, I'm not so sure about that. I think then they might start making more long-term strategic decisions. But I think if they really like Stroud or Bryce Young, or I suppose I should keep Levis out there just in case, then I don't think they hesitate to pull the trigger. I don't think you overthink it. This notion that you got to wait until you have a good offensive line to draft the quarterback is a really hazardous one. Because for one, I think you underestimate how quickly an offensive line can change. Look at Indianapolis this year. One big thing that happened with Indianapolis was nobody on earth, I don't think, expected that offensive line to all of a sudden fall apart. And that offensive line was one of the things that kept them a respectable football team through multiple different quarterbacks, old quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, and they just fell apart. So it can work that way where you can get really bad. But also, if you look at the Texans' offensive line as it's constructed right now, they're fine at offensive tackle. they are okay at right guard. AJ Cann's fine. AJ Cann is fine if he has a good center to his left. And then I think it's really just a matter of Kenyon Green and what does he turn into. So in the offseason, you draft a veteran swing interior offensive lineman. I think that if you need to, if you've got a young quarterback, you've got that veteran free agent there for you. But still, you gotta play it out with Kenyon Green and see what happens. But if you do get a good center, and it's not a great year for centers, but I'm just saying a viable center. I mean, look at Justin Britt was a guy that a lot of people thought was going to be out of football forever, and he came back and he was just kind of scratching and clawing his way into staying in the league. I don't think if he had been on another team, he would have made it to training camp this year before whatever the hell happened to him. So that alone, and just putting a viable center in there. I believe Ben Jones is a free agent, unless they did something. I'd welcome. Oh boy, I'd welcome that bug-eating bastard back so quick. And it's not like he's at the height of his powers or anything, but that could really tie things together. So, like the Rug in The Big Lebowski, he could tie things together. And if you take let's say Ben Jones at center, you got AJ Cann at right guard, either an improved Kenyon Green or a veteran swing left guard, and then all of a sudden you got a viable offensive line. More than anything, though, and I really believe this still, a lot of the issues with the pass protection through the years, and the pass protection wasn't as much of an issue as the run blocking this past year, but a lot of the issues just with the offensive line in general were more about the overall scheme and a lack of clarity for responsibilities, sometimes overly complex rules as to how guys are supposed to sort things out. And this offensive line, I think, can be good enough to handle a young quarterback, easily enough that you shouldn't let it detract. You can't sit there and say, well, we're going to wait until everything's perfect. We're going to wait until we got the best offensive line. We're going to wait until we got great wide receivers. We're going to wait until we've got both a Rob Gronkowski and an Aaron Hernandez. You can't wait until everything's perfect. That's like if you wait until everything's perfect to have a child, then you're 65 years old, and then that's not perfect. Think about that. If you wait too long, don't have kid, don't have a kid to save the marriage. Okay? Don't be one of these people. Don't think that you're going to save the relationship by having a kid. Okay? So as soon as you start thinking that way, that relationship is over. So there's a right time. I think right now we're ready to have a child in the form of a child-sized Bryce Young, and it's a matter of okay, we don't have the job we want. Maybe mom's still going to night school to get her associate's degree. I'm still working a double shift, and it's not perfect, but you know what? We'll have stability at home, and we'll love the kid. So let's have a kid right now, and we'll rescue a shelter animal, and everything will be perfect. So that's where I am right now. I feel good enough about this offensive line that I think we could do it. Clint is the Kubiak who's been coaching at the NFL level for 7 years. Clay is the younger one who's still kind of at the quality control level. Thank you for clearing up my QBX. There's a baby Price. Okay. Oh, okay. So as far as why they won't take a quarterback, Donovan Jackson says, I think that the running game will be emphasized this year and then run bootleg off of that. Yes. What kind of an offense should you expect? I think that, in the old days, it was a whole lot of bootleg. Defenses have gotten savvy about how to shut that down, so you use it when it's appropriate. But the play action especially, and I do think that's where the appeal of Trey Lance probably with Kyle Shanahan still comes in, that he ran a system that was very similar to the 49ers in college. So I think, what did I say? Kubiak, Shanahan. I think Shanahan probably feels like Trey Lance, once he gets comfortable in the NFL, has a lot of that residual time spent, the reps taken in an offense that's similar to that aside from the bootleg and the play action, as they start to assimilate a lot of the RPO and Trey Lance's athleticism itself, not to mention his big arm, like that deep shot that they love to take if they can set it up with the play action. I think that's what appeals to him about Trey Lance. And I think that's always going to be there. You know, if you're a quarterback like Shanahan and you spend a half a year with a guy, there's always a danger that you take that half year and you start thinking, oh, okay, well, that can, you know, that's who he is, and we can do that all the time. And it just doesn't work out that way. We've seen it so many times where that half year mark is kind of when teams start to catch up to what you can do. And they never really had an opportunity. Teams didn't really have an opportunity to figure out what Purdy could and couldn't do. So I don't think there's any way that Shanahan looks at Purdy as like, oh, yeah, that's our guy. We know for sure. Because Brian Hoyer was once that guy. Brian Hoyer was a guy that looked like for a half a season, man, this might really be the guy. I think we got something here. Then you know what happened? The Texans got duped. They got duped because, not only did he look good for half a season before injuries took their toll on the Browns' offensive line and on the quarterback himself, I believe, but he's got experience in New England. So now we'll bring him in, and Brian Hoyer will certainly be better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't want to. I like Shanahan doesn't want to fall into that trap. So let's see. I think y'all are getting Young, as in Bryce Young. The Bears have Fields. Also, it's the Bears. You never know with them. Yeah, you do never know with them. I think they are all in on Fields. I think the coach has to worry about places where I think the coach has to worry about his job security more so than the quarterback. Aside from the obvious ones, I think that the Bears are one. I guess this is obvious, but I don't know if I've seen this chatted about in Cleveland somewhat. I haven't seen it talked about a lot nationally, but the Browns, man. I mean, I feel like people in Cleveland, I don't think they really realize the power that David Mulligetta wields. That Stefanski, if Stefanski is not Deshaun's favorite dude come training camp, even, I don't know, man. And I don't even think it was Deshaun that got Bill O'Brien fired. I'm not implying that. It's just that they're not going to wait. The Browns themselves aren't going to stick around and see if Stefanski is definitely the issue or not. If the guy that they're giving $230 million guaranteed to, yeah. Thank you, Benjamin. We got duped with Osweiler. Yes. Okay. That's a much better example. Okay. My rule is if Kyle Shanahan quits on a quarterback, then you are unlikely to get a better effort out of that quarterback with your own offensive coordinator, no matter who it is. Like Kyle Shanahan is here, and everybody else is either here or lower in terms of getting the most out of a quarterback. So likewise, Kubiak, who had a history of getting the best performances out of guys individually. So not talking about whether he elevated guys to Pro Bowl status or Hall of Fame status or anything, but I feel like Kubiak had a very good ability to take a guy like Sage Rosenfels or Matt Schaub or anybody like that and get the best out of them. And that's what he did with Osweiler. I mean, Osweiler left his best football a mile high in Denver, and he left it there for good. We know that. And yet it was enough that the Texans said, hey, look at that. If we could, Bill O'Brien's got to be as smart as Gary Kubiak, right? No. So that's what you got to be watching. Let's see. You missed. Stop it, man. Somebody made a slur of Brock Osweiler's name, and I will not abide that, my friends. I feel like for the first time since the DeAndre Hopkins trade, and let's be honest. Well, yeah, I guess really so the first time since the Kansas City loss in the playoffs for sure that the Texans have a good shot at being on the right path. And I'm almost being too. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. You don't want to start getting too big for your britches this early in the offseason. But at the very least, the reasons that people are excited about DeMeco Ryans are very, very valid reasons to be excited about DeMeco Ryans. You guys know that I've known DeMeco Ryans for a long, long time, and I'm really excited to see what he's able to do with this. The only thing I worry about with DeMeco Ryans is that he might not be a big enough jerk. because sometimes that holds guys back. So you got to learn. You got to, like with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll learned that he didn't have to be a jerk. He just knows that in pro football, the biggest motivator by far is fear of losing your job. And I don't mean just even your paycheck, losing your job as a starter. So the one thing the 49ers have done such a great job of is, or at least they did until everything just kind of got too big and toppled over on itself. They had these guys that were just hyper competitors. And DeMeco's different than Pete Carroll in a lot of ways, but I think that DeMeco is one of those guys that A, understands pro football and understands that guys want to do well at their jobs and are going to compete. But B, when you hear Brian Cushing talk about DeMeco, he has this quality where you don't want to let him down. Like you're terrified that you're going to let him down. Like I don't want to let DeMeco down. And that's a powerful motivator, especially for young men. I think DeMeco has that that ability. And he still looks like a young guy to me, but now I just realized on my 48th birthday that I'm kind of old. So I think to a lot of these young guys, without getting overly dramatic about it or anything, I think there is that kind of uncle-like quality or big brother type of quality that a lot of young guys in the NFL respond to. And DeMeco has that. I think that was a lot of the sway he had over guys was for a lot of young guys that sometimes have issues trusting coaches or trusting just older guys in general. Like they feel like DeMeco is a guy that's in their corner and is looking out for them and trying to get the best out of them. Obviously, it's pro football, so you can't be in everybody's corner all the time. But I am excited about that. Let's see. The only thing Brock learned from Manning was how to talk to the media. They hyped him up so much from being under Peyton. Yeah. Brock. What was your guys' favorite Brock Osweiler memory? Like, honestly. Like, what was remember that throw he made? What was that really nice throw he made in the last seconds of a game? See, I blocked it out. And it was a prayer of a pass, and it was just a really nice catch. But that was probably the high point for him. I would say, like, throwing into cover two, like, into spots that high school quarterbacks not to throw were my least favorite memories. Every interception tells a story, except for Brock, in which a lot of them told the exact same story. That was a really ironic thing about Brock saying that, was that a lot of Brock's interceptions all told the same story, no matter how much he said. Oh, yeah. Joe Duke. The only thing I remember was the Mexico lights. Okay. All right. Now we're working with something. When he had laser beams shined into his eyeballs, that's when he was at his best. He was like the first crypto dude, right? He was to the moon with those lasers in his eyes. He was a man ahead of his time. And now he's a college commentator. The horrible HEB commercials, those were pretty bad. We're for anybody just joining us, we're going over the best and worst Brock Osweiler memories since we're I don't know. Okay, let's see. The worst things, now that we're all actually feeling pretty good right this moment, the worst things from the past decade. The worst things from the past decade, I would say various J.J. Watt injuries. I think the time DeAndre Hopkins said, "Get him the bleep out of here" about Brian Hoyer. I would say the time that that Andre Johnson in 2013 was so upset that he walked off the field early. I believe that was in 2013. Let's see. The Thrumble, the throw for a fumble. That was in Denver, was it not? Let's see. Osweiler has the same amount of playoff wins as Watson. It's true. Never forget. When he was in college and spiked that Sunday. I forgot about. Yes. Oh, yeah. I got to get a producer so we can pull this stuff up. You guys know what happens when I try to start pulling this stuff up on my own. Don't have one. He was dreadful to watch. Another buddy says that, when he, okay, there we go. Let's see. The trade was my favorite part of Brock Osweiler. That is a topic of conversation in Houston, the Osweiler trade and where you were on that day. I was trying to watch a movie for 2 straight hours without checking my phone because I was trying not to be so ADHD. And I broke the rule and ended up having to pause it. Brandy was very upset. She wasn't that upset, but she was like, "All right, Seth, seriously, You lasted not even an hour into this pledge. Okay, let's see. Big Papa says this. Let's get back to our guy, since we haven't really talked about it much in like the last 45 minutes. Bobby Slowik. So Big Papa says, "Oh great, another 49ers coaching steal somebody else. I have to think highly of his I can't. Big Papa, I can't read this. Oh, great. Okay, you're a 49ers fan, and you're upset about another 49ers coaching steal. Good luck, and hope your players have a good character, because D'Amico will demand it." Yes! Yes, Big Papa! Yes! Yes! Big Papa's the man. Listen, Big Papa, I have a video for you that's relevant to this. And it's, or I have a screen. I want to impress upon everybody just exactly what a challenge this has been for Kyle Shanahan to replace a lot of these guys. Because that's Bobby Slowik. We watched him a little bit earlier. He does not have a dynamic personality, which is awesome, because that means there's a really good chance that he will not be plucked like anytime soon. So, all right, this is from 2 years ago. These are the coaches that he's lost: Mike LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, Bobby Turner, Wes Welker, John Benton, the offensive line coach, used to be in Houston. Bobby Slowik, now gone. And this was, I believe this graphic is from Robert Mays at The Athletic, so I foisted it from him. Okay, now, but this is where I want you to take a little bit of a leap here, because I know one of the huge concerns is, okay, you hire a defensive coach, he's going to have to replace his offensive coordinator, and then what are you going to do about it? I think that, for one, like I said, Bobby Slowik, like right this moment, does not seem like he's got a huge a huge head coach personality. That can change. Don't get me wrong. Guys grow into it. He's only 35 years old. His balls have barely dropped by now. So, but let's remember that this 49ers defense has been really good for 4 years in a row now. They've been top 10 in defensive efficiency for 4 years in a row, and I believe they've been top 5 for 3 of those 4 years. So that's with Robert Saleh and with DeMeco Ryans as their defensive coordinator. But Kyle Shanahan's an offensive-minded coach. And I know it's a little bit apples to oranges, but Kyle Shanahan as an offensive-minded coach, has lost all these guys, and now including DeMeco Ryans, but Robert Saleh, their special teams coaches, all those guys, and yet they've remained very, very good. And I think part of it is simply that Shanahan hires, and then I think cultivates guys and kind of helps them grow into guys that can handle one level above them. With Belichick, I've watched it long enough now that I think one of the reasons that his guys don't tend to do well as head coaches is that he simply doesn't really hire those types of guys. And I don't think it's even necessarily that's his plan. Like, he's not trying to keep guys from doing well or to dilute the competition, and that's his grand scheme. I think that maybe just for him, there's a certain type of personality, like a Josh McDaniels type of personality, that works real well under him, but that doesn't necessarily make the best head coach. And we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong about Josh McDaniels. We'll see. But at least as a young guy, he wasn't that guy. So, I mean, let's be honest. The Belichick personality doesn't really usually work as a head coach unless you happen to be a genius. And also maybe with a creative view of, creative interpretations of various rules and whatnot. So, like, that part is exciting to me. I think the fact that Slowik was identified a couple years ago by writers in San Francisco as like the next bright kid on Shanahan's staff, and he's been the offensive passing game coordinator for 2 years now. And if you watch the 49ers play, that's no simple passing offense to pull off in terms of what they ask. Oh, this is what we should get excited about. Let me write this down. Going to talk about this with Sean Pendergast on Monday. Versatility. Because we've watched, O'Brien try to shoehorn guys into versatility a lot over the last few years. Landry Locker started saying that, he would say the V word instead of versatility, because it seemed like that was what they valued above all other things. And that's great if you can get it. And in San Francisco, they got it. Now, you credit John Lynch for a big part of that, for going out and finding guys like George Kittle in the 5th round. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, neither of those guys high draft picks. Kyle Juszczyk. Juszczyk may have predated John Lynch. I can't remember. Somebody tell me. But you go out and find these guys that can play multiple different positions, and it really does set you up for success. So the versatility element is something I think maybe you finally blessedly have here in Houston, and we don't have to. It doesn't have to. You don't have to call it the V word anymore. Big Papa. Before I go, I want to give you a little bit more shine because I'm going on a hike with my family here in a second. It's so much fan fun. Do you have a team that you can have your kids root for because you know they are a good character? Enjoy another 49ers product. Oh, okay. So having a team you can root for because they have good character. I will say, oh yeah, plus Big Papa points out, thank you for the 3rd round compensatory pick. The 49ers will get a 3rd round compensatory pick because they had an assistant coach who was a person of color or minority, elevated to head coach elsewhere. So they get that 3rd round compensatory pick. So I think that when you watch the 49ers play, that's the way you want your football team to play. And when you watch D'Amico Ryans talk, that's the way you want your coach to talk. And I'm very excited about Bobby Slowik. I'm excited now. We got an actual football team with an actual staff and no drama about what the vice president of football operations is or isn't in charge of. And we feel good about the family that owns the team. It's just, it feels good right now, man. And we'll get upset with each other. We'll get angry about various decisions. Many of you were angry with me like 12 hours ago because I wasn't a fan of Kliff Kingsbury, and I get it. I'm glad that you love Kliff Kingsbury. But for me now, personally, I'm happy that it's Bobby Slowik, and I encourage all of you to drive safely, drink responsibly, and enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday and your new coaching staff.